Everybody, welcome back to Theosophy. Continuing in the subject of occultism, this episode I'm going to be focusing on divination. So, what is divination, and does it differ from similar words like prophecy and soothsaying and so on? And I think so. I think the biggest difference, when people think of prophecy, oftentimes it's a natural gift or something directly attributed to the gods, whereas divination is more about a process of predicting the future, of determining future outcomes. Now, what I mean by that is it's not something that someone inherently is gifted at. More, it's a skill or a science that is learned. And different cultures use different means. The most famous of which, probably, if I had to guess, would be the using bird entrails. Using animal organs in general has been a really common means of determining the future. And it's a very surprising one. But if we look at it, if we consider a few patterns that might arise in human history, just hypothetically, let's say that there is a river with toxins near a human settlement, very recent human settlement. And by recent, I don't mean like nowadays. I just mean it recently took place in a Paleolithic period, right? And there's toxins in this river, and someone hunts a deer and gets it, and takes it back to camp, eviscerates it, and there's something very wrong. There are nodular growths. There are things that are very unpleasant on various organs. And they take it to the village shaman, and they say that bad times are in store for those of us in this village. We should really pack up and move. The gods are telling us we need to go elsewhere. And 3/4 of the village heeds his warning, and they all pack up and move. But a quarter don't. They think it's nonsense, so they don't believe it. Or they have another shaman that they're listening to, and he says, don't worry about it. And then, little by little, the children in the village, they get sick, and they start dying one by one. Now, modern science would tell us that the reason for this is that the poisonous compounds in the water caused those lesions on the organs of the deer, and subsequently drinking or being around the same water and those same compounds is what caused a buildup of those compounds in the children, and because they're smaller, they were affected faster, and so the soothsayer's prophecy came to light. That's a hypothetical situation that I presented, but I think it could easily be an explanation for why so many cultures use internal organs of animals as a means of forecasting the future. I think that more than anything, these good or ill omens, they could be attributed, at least from a few previous instances, on environmental influences. You know, bad water, bad air, things of that. Things that foretell calamity for human society, because there's actually a direct link between what's happening to the animal and what could happen to the people. And it just sort of evolves from there into, forecasting the outcome of a war, forecasting the will of the gods in regard to things that could never have a direct link. Now, that's a very skeptical interpretation of it, but I find it very peculiar that because there's all sorts of methods for divination, scrying, drawing lots. I mean, think of that one. That's an interesting one that everyone has, who has any familiarity with the Bible, for example, would be aware of. Drawing lots is a form of divination. It's not just like drawing straws and seeing leaving it up to chance. It's really more a question of what does God want? Who's supposed to go into battle tomorrow, or as a sacrifice, or whatever. Mary's the eldest daughter. You get the idea. It's not just a question of flipping a coin, which of course could be a form of divination. That leads me to the big one that I was going to talk about, which is the I Ching. The I Ching is a fascinating divination tool, and what amazes me most about it, you could draw direct comparisons between the I Ching and a computer, in that it uses sort of a binary language. Instead of ones and zeros, it's complete lines and broken lines. And a set number of these combinations of broken and solid lines leads to trigrams. And trigrams are interpreted as different means of forecasting what action you should take. And one of the more interesting things to me about the I Ching as a divination tool is not only does it have all of these Jungian archetypes in the trigrams, and when I say that, I actually probably shouldn't have phrased it that way. That was sort of a misspeaking on my part, because they're really more like non-Jungian archetypes. They don't actually correspond directly to the ones that we all are familiar with. In some ways, they're sort of standalone concepts that you could derive an entire subculture on, kind of like how Jungian archetypes have played a huge role in modern film and literature. These could work similar. They're more abstract, though. Instead of dealing with things like magicians and hermits, you're dealing with things more on par with, thunder and burning mountains and things of that sort. But they all correspond to actions that you can take. And interestingly, almost all of them are extremely positive. They tend to be, stick to this course. And I think the reason for that, and now we're getting into yet another more skeptical interpretation, is in the instant that you cast these trigrams, you kind of, it's odd. Once you take action, you kind of know what you want the outcome to be. And so, regardless of how you actually phrase the question, when it says no errors if you stay on this course, what it's really in some respects saying is your initial instincts and the interpretations of your desires that you had in that instant when the trigram actually popped up, that's the one. That's what you should go with. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Going on vacation this weekend will cause disaster. So, tell the fam that they need to stay home. It's in some ways more about validating a person's instincts. And if you think about it, I can think of no more valid, more verified, more objectively true form of divination than our sixth sense, that's really just our five senses. The sum total of our heightened awareness for the sake of survival, it all adds up to us understanding things that on a conscious level we may not really recognize. We might assume is either denial or just a misunderstanding of our own impulses and drives and instincts. But really it's kind of, how many times has this happened to you where you've had a very negative, I've got a bad feeling about this, but you go through with it anyway because logical brain beats instincts. And it turns out, yeah, instincts were right all along. I knew something was up. I knew that fellow was shady. I knew that business deal wasn't really going to work out. I knew not to drive to that part of town today, etc. How often does that happen? It happens all the time. And it's not, in this instance, I don't think, and this is a more skeptical view of things, even though every other video I've had has not been, but I think that it's really the sum total of all of our sensory perception that we sort of block out, because we block out a lot of information. Our subconscious blocks out so many things, so our conscious mind can just sort of maintain a strict evaluation of the things going on around us, that it's pretty amazing. A great example of this, and the outlet that it has, which also goes hand in hand with divination, would be dreams, because a lot of people have prophetic dreams, right? Well, likewise, you walk through a mall and you don't pay attention to the perfume lady at the counter. You don't. It's not important. I'm not buying perfume today. But then that night, you're at a bus stop and a killer's stalking you, and he kills someone, and you see it happen, and it's the lady from the perfume counter, but you don't know that. You never make that conscious association because your brain drew on that. Your subconscious was like, yeah, let's remember every detail of that person's face and use it in a dream later. It's amazing the things that we actually take in but filter out just so we can function. Well, I think that a lot of that information, it can add up into reaching conclusions that are in our best interest that we attribute sometimes in some societies as being prophetic or occult or magic, when really it's perfectly scientifically grounded. And I think that dreams definitely can work in that way. It could just be your subconscious seeing patterns in things that you're less aware of, and it's like, yeah, this has happened before. When this happens, and this happens, and this happens, then this happens, and that's going to happen. And it could be your subconscious telling you that. That's all I've got for divination this episode. Like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.